Hey everyone, welcome to week 5 of May the Internet Be With You. Today we're going to look at the Force Academy and its history because the Force Academy is the longest running website in the history of our community. As in, you can check it out to this very day. And they have live discussions going on. It's not just the dead board. But the website we're going to be looking at is actually the old version, the original version that they had when they had the forceacademy.com web name. That got changed, and now it's that got lost, I should say. Not changed, but lost. And then it had to go over to a different domain name. But it is still active. There are still message boards, and you can still take part if you want to. But let's go back in time. You all should have the link to the website or the archive version. So go ahead, hit it there. If you don't have it, sharing it. Now it can be found in the description of the video. Now the first place we're going to go to is obviously the main page. And this is just, it's pretty simple. It kind of shows you basically where the Force Academy was at. Now it was created in 1999, this version. The Force Academy kind of came together in 1998, but it really didn't develop into what we see now until early 1999. It took a while. It was created by an individual named Andrew, and he went by the name the Force Master, which was a play on words back then. The webmaster, the person who ran the website, that was their title, and so he went with Force Master. To show you kind of where the Force Academy first started out, we're going to do a quick couple clicks. So you're going to see the home button right under the Force Academy up in the left-hand corner. Come down and you're going to see Force Council and then Jedi, like Jedi. Go ahead, click on that, and then we're not even going to stay there. That's something we're going to get to later. Instead, I want you to go back to that little menu and click on Jedi Masters. And what you're going to see here is historic Jedi Masters, according to the Force Academy. These Jedi Masters, with the list of XR Kun here, kind of goes to show that these are all fictional. These are not real Jedi. These are all fictional Jedi that were really well known in books, really popular books at the time. The Jedi Academy series, Young Jedi Knights, and I, Jedi. And this is what the Force Academy really was when it first started. It followed the vein of the websites that we had looked at, right? Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, Jedi Lore. It followed the same principles as this. It was born out of those. So let's go down again. We're just going to go through this real quick and highlight this. So again, below Jedi Masters is the Force, and only use the link on the little links over there on the side. The Force on big link doesn't quite work, so forget that. But here we are. We see the Force, and again, it has a very fictional account of the Force, and it works from that fictional standpoint. From the depths of the universe it came, life. And with life, there came beauty. As life grew, it diversified, becoming more than just crude skin and bones or leaves and branches. Vast energy grew with life, fed by both beauty and ugliness of life, thriving, growing, and evolving. It's wonderful. I love it. But it comes from fan sites, basically. This basically just comes from a fan site where Star Wars fans, like the role players, were just discussing the movies and kind of discussing the ideas and the concepts they saw throughout the movies. Moving on, Force Lessons. And for those of you who have been sticking with us, you're going to like this one. So we go down to the Force Lessons. Oh, it's not this one. Never mind. Spoke too soon. Quotes from Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. So you have your basic Star Wars quotes from the movies. We probably all know them very well, so we're not going to stay here long. But again, this was the very beginning of Jedi teachings, right? This was the very essence. We took our inspiration, looked at it, reflected upon it, meditated on it, sought to apply it to our everyday lives, and then our lessons grew out of that. The Jedi community it grows from Star Wars, but more than that, it grows from the experiences of all of us who have been studying it and seeking to apply it. It's our experiences that kind of define how the Jedi have grown and the community that we have today and the community that we'll have in the next 20 years. So moving on, here's the one I was going to, this is the one I got a little too excited for. Meditation, right under Force lessons there. So it talks about meditation. What meditation can you do as a Jedi? Meditation is a core, everyday practice of any Jedi. It doesn't matter what level you are. You start being a Jedi 15 seconds ago, meditation is going to happen today. You've been a Jedi for 15 years, meditation's going to happen today. It's just what happens, right? It doesn't stop. But go all the way down there and see the calming breath. And that's I love it. It's still there, right? It'll never go away. It is a core part of our path. Our path. So there it is in all its glory. The calming breath. Have fun. You could take it over. It's much more. This version is much more clear, right? It's color coded and the steps are clear. It's very easy to follow. Some may want to bookmark that in case you want to practice it. And it's just a good, clear description of the calming breath. Now we're going to go back or go down. Let's see. I don't think that one has it. Yeah, so you're going to have to go back. Hit the back button. Under meditation, we're going to go to the lightsaber. This was actually the very first page that I found with the Force Academy. I was doing web searches at the time, looking for a new place to train. I knew of the Force Academy through the Yahoo email groups, but I did not know that there was a website at the time, right? In 1998, all they had was really the idea of the Force Academy, and like many websites or groups back then, we used Yahoo email groups, and you just got emails either daily or weekly and discussed amongst people. The email group back then was probably 300 members, and most of them were active. It was really chaotic. It was really crazy to keep up on discussions. Those were our Facebook groups. Jedi today, they know the Facebook groups and how Jedi groups have them. Ours were the very first ones were the Yahoo groups. So if you can imagine a Facebook group with 300 active members all trying to voice their opinion on the subjects that interest them at once, whoo, good times. Good times. You learn you multitasking and diplomacy on the fly. It's really interesting. But again, fictional approach, right? Lightsabers don't exist, but why not? We're Jedi, so we have to have something on lightsabers. I was awed by it, of course, and it was enough to bring me into the website. So it did its job. We'll go down under lightsaber, a Jedi's ally. And, of course, a Jedi's ally is the Force. And it's just more points on Jedi, the Force, responsibility, life, fun stuff, good stuff. Again, you can read over all these. These aren't going anywhere. I'm not taking them down. You don't have to worry about it. So we're just going to move along to Force aspects. Now, there's two things on this. This is an introduction. This is what we call leeway, right? So here we have the aspects, and it's only going to talk about two aspects. It's going to talk about the light side and the dark side, and it's talking about in a fictional sense, right? The light side and the dark side exist in the universe as nature intended. It has that dichotomy. Anger and hate are the dark side in this version. If you read through it, you'll see that. In fact, you could probably go down to the very last sentence there, or very last line, and see that it has anger and hate summon the dark side. Jedi must condition themselves to separate from these emotions. By releasing the grip on their conscious self, a Jedi can free their emotion and desire, and thereby grow powerful in the light side. Of course. There is something missing here, something that would basically define the Force Academy. as its own entity and become the sole place. And if we go back up to that home button, you will see it. We're gonna go into an FAQ. Said it again. Q&A for a second. We're gonna do a Q&A real quick. But I just want to highlight that if you go down to that little thing, you're gonna see, home, the Force, spaceport, images, Force Council, Light Jedi, Dark Jedi, and Shadow Jedi. And that's an aspect that was not mentioned there, because when this website first started in early 1999, that aspect had not yet come into being yet. So it really focused on the dichotomy of light and dark. And out of the fictional dichotomy, that very fictional focus, the shadow aspect did grow. Now, before we get into that, and we will get into it, I'm going to open this up to any questions we may have. So, questions, and we're going to go through the video first, and then we'll go through, if any of you guys are watching on any other platform, you can do the Q&A section, and we'll check that out second. First come, first serve, so start typing now. Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, Jedi Sage, Angelus, do you have any questions?
No questions at this point.
Okay, all right. Soon to be Jedi Knight, Cayenne, do you have any questions?
I don't know if I have specific questions. I'm reeling with nostalgia at the moment. This is where I started in the Jedi community at this stage of the website. So I'm very much enjoying this so far, and I really love the definition of the Force. I love, that even though it's a fictional definition, I think this is the way a lot of our community, especially those without, other religious beliefs, still view the Force, even though it's clearly sort of a fan fiction derived description, and it's very poetic. It's meant to inspire a feeling of what the movies made us all feel. That's still how I see the Force, of energy and the sort of beauty in the universe. So I kind of love it that this has been a thing in our community for this long. So, but no questions.
All right, that works. That's fine. Jedi, well, Knight, technically somewhere, knighted somewhere, runs his own program, the JediPath.org, if I'm correct on that. Christopher, California Jedi, my man. Any questions for you? You're still muted, by the way.
Okay. So, looking a little bit ahead, I see there's a fan fiction section, and I was noticing in that list of Jedi Masters, there were canonical, that is, from comics and books, Jedi Masters, but there is one that isn't anywhere to be found on Wikipedia or anything, and I was wondering if some of their inspiration was actually coming from fan-generated fiction at this point.
Yeah, it's a good question. There was the person who created it was very much into Star Wars and the various explorations of it, and certainly there were some stories and characters that did stick that were not canon per se. So certainly, yeah. The source and the inspiration came from whatever was available at the time, and some of that was through just role playing, and then some of that was fan fiction that would make its way forward, and then of course Star Wars in all its media coverage, right? So movies, books, comic books, all of it was definitely looked at and was a part of it. So great question, thank you. And we're gonna take a look Any questions from our gallery? No written questions. Okay, so moving on. The next part I want to get into is definitely the aspects. As I said, we're going to get into that. Now, aspects is important. It's important. And it's important for really two reasons. One, it really defines the Force Academy. It really brings out what the Force Academy was about, which was exploring kind of the world and our experiences through the Star Wars terminology. But also because when it first started out, aspects wasn't the word. As you can kind of see here on this little side menu, Light Jedi, Dark Jedi, Shadow Jedi. Jedi was the first word used, now it's aspects. It makes a difference because it wasn't the light aspect or the light Jedi that kind of fought the ideal, fought that concept of using the Jedi title. Originally, it was the dark aspect, and that's because they had in the beginning a broader set of labels. It wasn't just Dark Jedi, right? It was Sith, Janissari, all these other different little splinter groups that wanted to create their own thing. Individuals, right, that didn't want to be stuck under a label, or people who felt dark was its own thing, and they went by titles such as Dark Knight, not to be confused with Batman later on. But they very much viewed it as its own entity and its own aspect. So Dark Jedi was kind of considered this little small piece of the puzzle, and what came out of this was that there was a realization with Jedi, right? Jedi was like being in love. Either you were or you weren't. Wasn't really any middle ground there. There's either you are or you aren't, and that's just what it is. The shadow aspect that kind of grew out of the dichotomy of this very, when it first started, very fictional view of the dark side is very dark, and hate and anger, and emotional, base emotions, and then the light side was all peace, love, fluffy bunnies, rainbows and balloons, yay, light Jedi. Fairy dust, think happy thoughts and you can fly. And there was a big group of people who were like, the Force isn't divided that way, and people aren't divided that way, and life is not divided that way, and there are these areas of gray, and there's this moral ambiguity that sometimes exists in certain situations in life. And the person who kind of really led the charge in this, or would become the leader and put in the most work for it, he went by the name Shinobi at the time. And that was because he was actually studying Jiu-Jitsu for his martial arts at the time, and he saw a lot of similarities between what he was studying in his practice and then what he saw in Star Wars. And so he was integrating the two, but he could never find a way to kind of get that dichotomy to work, to get light and dark, get that parallel to work. He kind of saw it as a necessary whole, and that it sides just didn't exist. And out of that, Shadow Jedi came to be. Andrew, the Force Master, he started out with the Light Jedi and soon went to Shadow. And again, they grew. They were one of the first ones. They were before the people of the Force Academy, like the Light Jedi of the Force Academy, kind of accepted this view of aspects. It was the Shadow aspect that kind of also separated themselves and let go of the word Jedi, kind of following suit with the dark aspect. They let go of it because they didn't want to be constrained by it. They felt it was a very limiting label, that it had a meaning and that it brought to mind certain things, and and that did not really apply to the Shadow. So they very much went to the aspects as well. And again, removing Jedi, kind of Shadow Knight, Shadow Master, things like that, which is cool sounding in itself. So definitely plus up, for them. So that's the direction that kind of went for some time. You had this concept of three aspects in one place discussing the overall views of the world, and it very much touched on ethics, right? But not directly, like no one really said it directly, but that's what the discussion was. The dark aspect at the time, or dark Jedi if you will, were very much about the ends justify the means. Do whatever you have to, doesn't matter, as long as you reach the end goal that you are going for. And if that's a very selfish thing, even better, because now you don't even have to worry about anything. All you have to worry about is getting to where you want to get, and however you do that is okay. That was the original, viewpoint back then. Jedi very much were set in the intentions matter, right? If you had really good intentions, but things went south, that's okay, because your heart was in the right place. It's all right. You had good intentions. You wanted to help people. You can't hold yourself, responsible that things didn't work out. That was kind of the ethical stance of the Jedi back then when they were starting. And the shadow aspect really had this concept of it's not really that and it's not really this. It's somewhere in the middle, and it kind of fluctuates per situation, per person, what you're dealing with, what you're not. And that was their stance on that. And we're going to go through really quick and just kind of look at one lesson of each one. And again, it's my looking at it, right? So I'm going to tell you to look at it, and then I'm going to tell you to get the heck out. So read quickly. We're going to go down to Shadow Jedi first. So you can go ahead, get on that little menu over there, or I guess it's over there on you, however the camera flips me around. And you can hit Shadow Jedi, and it's going to bring up a bunch of lectures. The first one is just kind of your general introduction to Shadow Jedi, right? And it points out everything that I just rambled on about. The light side and dark side of the Force, and kind of how it works and how it doesn't. So I always figure it's almost for sure, no matter what you do, that the first lecture is probably going to work for you. It's not going to be the case with the dark side, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But on first lecture, just open that one up, lecture number 1, and you're going to it's Shinobi. And you'll see his name right there is actually Justin Talent, but and he's just talking about this view, and this is when the Shadow first started. It was kind of taking this conflict that existed within the website, the constant debates and the dark versus light, and then just kind of shredding it down, kind of showing that I don't think what you guys are doing is actually, you're not benefiting. You're kind of just bumping heads because you think you're supposed to. And this is probably most prevalent at the very bottom. Again, we're just going to jump down to the bottom here. And it says, people on the shadow side often have the most fulfilling lives because, 1, there is no conflict, and 2, you fully appreciate both aspects of the Force because you live through both of them. That is the essence of how the Shadow started. Not dissimilar to the Gray Jedi. If you remember, we kind of talked about that last week in the codes, and a little bit at the week before that with Temple of the Jedi Arts we touched on. Gray Jedi back then, when they originally started, were again born out of this conflicting ideals of light side versus dark side. Again, remember, disclaimer, okay? We've grown since then, all right? We're not still stuck in that dichotomy. While Star Wars still holds on to it because it makes for great storytelling, we ourselves, as a community, as a path, as a way of life, have grown beyond that. Our understanding has certainly evolved through our experiences. So don't think you need to revive these shadow and gray paths. The reason for their existence has pretty much fallen to the wayside. But this is what it was, and there was an embracing of the whole, which is not unsurprising for those who follow in Eastern thought and Eastern martial arts. Things like the Tao and Yin Yang really kind of prevail this idea of a whole rather than two sides conflicting with one another, right? So this was the Shadow Jedi, and we'll go right back to home, and we're going to go down to the Dark Jedi. So we're kind of at the bottom. So Dark Jedi, which again, Dark was, it first started out Sith, but a lot of labels there. That's why they were like the first one to really let go of that Jedi name. Now we're going to go all the way down. All this is Sithy stuff. This first introduction, I don't know. It's very, the fiction. You can taste it. The history's there from before, so we're going to go bypass all the history, and we're going to go to lecture number 2. So go all the way down there to lecture number 2. And this one I bring up and want to use because it kind of highlights exactly where the dark side was at that time. Darth Maul ran it, and he ran it very much with that base emotions. Get in touch with your anger. Get in touch, with your emotions. Get in touch with that aggression. It was very much opposite of Jedi ideals. Even to this day, there's a lot very, very opposite of how we run things. So, but you could see Darth Maul. He was considered kind of like the father of the dark side because he really did take a lot of his own concepts, spiritual ideals, and things like that, and then wrapped them up very well in that Star Wars kind of terminology, and then sold it to the masses through that. And if you are a fan of Darth Maul and kind of that whole rage empowers me, then yeah, his stuff definitely it definitely spoke to a lot of people who really found awe in those kind of the scary side of Darth Vader and Darth Maul and those kind of characters, and the warrior side of all that. And this lesson kind of highlights that. It's why I point to it first. Again, it's all here. You can run through it and kind of dissect it. Again, disclaimer, not where they're at now. I guess some people are. Some people are kind of stuck in this die Jedi die mentality, but I don't know. I see that as kind of a regression. That's 1999 mentality, right? And here we are, 2015. And the people that you can get on a philosophical and ethical conversation with are just on a different level, right? It's not about hate and anger and all that, right? It's completely different discussion. So that's the dark side. Not going to stay here. It will forever dominate your destiny and all that fun stuff. Okay, so Light Jedi. Let's cleanse our palate, as it were, if you need to, I guess. We are going to go with this whole introduction. It highlights the Jedi Code for you, which is always fun. Always nice to see our old friend, the Jedi Code. It is the 4-line code. It is the 1987 code that I love. Well, I guess I like the 5-line better, but either way, still great code, fun stuff. Still very fictional. Still very much balance of light and dark. Blah blah blah. So we're actually going to go right to lecture number 1. Keep it simple, right? And the meaning of being a Jedi. And it's kind of short. It's kind of sweet. All of Jedi Knight G's kind of stuff tends to be short and sweet, which I love. Thumbs up for him. And he really did a good job on kind of putting together these materials, which again really spoke to as kind of Cayenne was saying, it really spoke to the fiction, but it inspired you to live it. It really spoke to you when you were looking to become this thing. When you were looking to become a Jedi, these kind of lessons were wonderful to have. Now, when I first started, none of this existed. There were none of these lectures. These lectures did not exist. These lectures came about at a different time. When I was part of the Force Academy, you saw it. There was a lot of fictional stuff. There was a lot of games. There was like there's a little flash player that has a rock, and then, it's a very picturesque scene. And it was levitation, to practice your force levitation. And in this little flash thing, a little stone would float up. Very fun. And if you weren't patient and you didn't watch, you might actually be tricked into believing that you actually did do it. Not saying that ever happened to me. Not saying that the first time I did it, I was, that I was sitting there kind of amazed and had to replay it a couple times to make sure that's what it did automatically. I'm not saying that, but it was fun. And then there was a quiz, right? And it was a Star Wars quiz. And what you did is you just it tested your Star Wars knowledge, right? Stuff from the movies. And also tested your reaction time. So the quicker that you answered the questions correctly, the better your score. And you got titles like, depending on how well you did, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master. You've been appointed to the Force or the Jedi Council, if you will. And that's how most people came into the message boards. And the message boards back then were called the Force Council. You can see those links there. Those links obviously don't work. The company that hosted them has long since been out of business, and they kind of did that without telling anybody. So they kind of just shut down the forums, and they did that, and I think over a decade of discussions and work and lectures and all of that was basically lost. A good portion was saved. Well, I can't even say a good portion. A portion was saved, hence these kind of lectures and things like that. But a lot of information was lost. Around the same time, why some of it was saved was because they lost the control of the domain name. They lost the domain name, reverted. They didn't renew it in time. And one of those hosting companies that kind of just sits on domain names grabbed it up and is still sitting on it to this day. They've sent off a couple messages to the Force Academy administration being like, hey, if you guys want to buy it back, it's only like $300. We'll give it back to you. And of course, they're smart enough, they're not going to do that. But the point of all that was that it kind of you lost that information. It got saved, and when I started out, it was so small. It was so little, and the way that we grew was through the fictional discussions, right? It was through the fictional discussions and our view of it, and then these lessons and these lectures came about out of those discussions, out of those kind of exploration of our aspects, if you will. For Jedi, it was light aspects. For Shadow and Dark, and then our interactions together kind of built it. And it's actually that full encompassing of aspects and people and individuality and the interconnectedness of all of them that has kept the Force Academy going this entire time. Since 1999, maybe even 1998 if you want to include the Yahoo group. The Force Academy is still going to this day, and I definitely attribute that to having that diverse and welcoming view for everybody. Now, it's like jumping in, learning to swim and jumping into a pool full of sharks, right? Like, there's no kiddie pool there either. It is very much, people there are very comfortable, and they've been doing this for a long time. A lot of the members have been are close to 10-year members, and so the conversations and debates these days have definitely a different feel than they did back in 1999. So you definitely have to watch out for that. But it speaks to the longevity, kind of encompassing it and having the open discussions, being like, no, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about our differences, and we're going to talk about these conflicts, and we're going to explore them. Really has led to them lasting as long as they have. Despite the many changes in leadership, councils, ways of running the site, all of that good stuff. I only have about one more point to cover, but again, I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions, comments, concerns, shoo-doo-boo, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to start in order again. Again, if you're watching on any sort of other medium, you can go ahead and use the Q&A section if you want to type in your questions, and we'll get to that. Jedi Angelus, any questions, comments, concerns, observations?
Well, you already spoke about the Gray Jedi and the Shadow Jedi, but I wanted to hit on, would the designations of the Force still be beneficial or useful in some way? Because now there is talk of like the living Force and the unifying Force. And so I wonder, like, merely from an academic standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, a practical standpoint, do these designations still valid? Are they still valid?
Definitely a good question. You know, as it seems to be a part of our path that when we remove one glass wall, we kind of put up another one. I think they're relevant, certainly, to, I think, when the individual is exploring such a broad topic as the Force, you're going to have some areas that need exploration more than others. And certainly ideas like the living Force and the unifying Force can help break it down and make it more accessible, maybe make it more digestible to certain people. Certainly gives its value, so it can have value. I think but likewise, it comes down to individuals. Some Jedi are just not going to have any need for that, right? Outside of understanding what it might mean for other Jedi. But ultimately, there's going to be some Jedi who just don't need it. That their view doesn't quite work with that segregation of the Force. But then again, like I said, for individuals, it might work really well. So is it necessary? Sure. On a very individual. If you're talking about overall for the community, I wouldn't say it's specifically necessary. I don't think you really have to touch on it. Like as a whole, I don't think you really have to start breaking it down for just in case someone might need it. If someone does bring it up, because when you talk about the Force, you're going to talk about it in its entirety, and you're going to talk about the Force as a whole, and your view, and your experiences, and what it means, and how you view it, how it interacts in life, how it doesn't. And some people will start breaking that down, like, you can view this as the unifying Force, you can view this as the living Force, and in that breakdown can be helpful, but again, it very much per person kind of thing. I don't see it as a necessity for the whole, but again, it's something to keep always on your bookshelf and always in your mind. It's definitely knowledge you kind of want to have just in case, especially in a teaching, if you're in a teaching role. You got to kind of have that information, the varying views that exist out there, kind of just because Star Wars has thrown it out there, right? So anytime Star Wars throws anything out there, kind of like light side, dark side, you still have to know that stuff. Is it really necessary to our path now? No, not really, but you still need to know it, and you still need to know how to approach it and kind of break it down. So certainly kind of, I guess, as you said, academically, yeah, I mean, it's, holds some value, and it will hold more value to certain individuals than it will others. But yeah, as such topics go. Jedi Cayenne of California Jedi. Questions, comments, concerns, reflections?
A little bit of all of those. So I really enjoyed what you were saying about the aspects. And, definitely starting at the Force Academy is like jumping into a pool of sharks, and learning how to not get eaten that way. But there's there's a lot of benefit to that kind of training. I mean, what better way to teach Jedi patience and calm when you're like tearing your hair out at somebody over the internet? But no, but I really honestly think, even though, like you were saying, as a community, we've sort of started to move past this idea that there is a light force or that there are sides or aspects to the force itself. I think we've all sort of embraced that, originally shadowy concept of like, this is the force, like we use it differently, but it's just a thing. There's one thing. But despite that, I do think it's the aspects that really have the credit for the Force Academy's longevity. Having people be able to have hugely different opinions about everything under the sun, and be able to really go at it. I think that kind of trial by fire, almost Socratic method of learning is really great. It was great for me when I was there, and I mean to this day, it's one of the only sites that really that's forum based, that really has a lot of regular outward facing discussion. Like IFJRS has lots of stuff with their lessons and interactions between students and teachers, and JAO/Jedi Living has like following, and people are like there and interact. But the Force Academy is like almost a whole another category in and of itself. I don't know. It's impressive, and I think it definitely shows us that the real strength of the community is in our diversity of opinion, and in our willingness to discuss those differences. But my question actually had to do with something I read under the shadow aspect, which I thought was super interesting. It says, the reason the dark and the light sides are at war is because they are both created by ambition. Which I was just sort of like, what? I don't know, it just like really struck me. Do you think that's true? And what place does ambition have on the Jedi path, do you think?
Good question. I think it's true in a sense. Certainly, anytime that you have two goals and that are, I guess, dynamically opposed to one another, you're gonna create conflict. If you have the right side trying to go left and left side trying to go right, eventually you're gonna meet in the middle, and you're gonna be like, I'm trying to go that way, you're trying to go this way. Well, you're in my way, right? And so there's some conflict in that. Yeah, there's some ambition. I mean, light or Jedi just in general, right? Or in Force Academy speak, light Jedi, world betterment through self betterment, right? So we have an idea that we want to improve kind of the lot around us, that we want to affect life, our life, the life around us, life in a whole, in a positive and beneficial manner. We want to do good. We want to leave good in our wake. We want people feeling like it was a great birthday day after they met us, right? And we want that. We want people to feel good. And the dark Jedi or Sith of that time was very much about the hate and the anger and stepping on people to get what you want. And who cares about the little people? They're all stepping stones. They're just sheep, and and you're the wolf, and you know, you need to just go out there, or you're the sheep herder, or what, you know. It was very much that idea of control and using people to your own personal benefit, regardless of the damage and destruction you left in the wake. If you ruin someone's life, oh freaking well, that's on them. They should have been stronger. They should have done it. It's not on you, right? So those two ideas are definitely dynamically opposed to one another, and they're both trying to get somewhere, and they both cannot really. Yeah, they're not going to work. You know, if a Jedi sees a person doing that, they're gonna say something. Conflict's going to arise out of that. And the Shadow Path really did have more that Tao feeling of, you know, let that be, you know, learned acceptance and, you know, hands off. You know, you don't have to take part in the fight. You know, there is another way, kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's something in that. But yes, as a Jedi, you have to have ambition. You have to have goals. You have to have a direction. I mean, that's the whole path is set up with rules and regulations and things like that. And that doesn't work for everybody, right? But for Jedi, where we want to go, we realize, no, there needs to be some sort of like direction and kind of guideline on how to get there. As broad as it may be in some sections, there's definitely still kind of restricting walls on our behavior and things that we consider acceptable in order to reach those ambitions, reach those goals. So it's definitely necessary. I don't think, you know, words like ambition tend to have a kind of negative connotation to some people. You know, there tends to be an association with selfish individual and selfish desire, and greed even. But no, ambition is definitely necessary. Direction's necessary. Goals are necessary in order to be a Jedi. Otherwise, you know, you can't be a Jedi and meditate in your room for 8 hours a day. Okay, that's not doing anything. You know, a lot of people want to build a Jedi temple, and they want to build in the middle of nowhere and make the next Shaolin monk temple, but like Jedi. And again, that does nothing. It does nothing. Will you be more enlightened and spiritually awakened? Possibly, but that's a very selfish ambition. Jedi are definitely looking to be involved and definitely looking to leave behind goodness. They want to look back and have people say, that person, she was awesome, man. She made me smile today. And you met them for 5 seconds. You know, you held the door open for someone who was struggling. You just smiled as you passed someone's day. You never know. You just said a kind word. You never know these like small acts that happen. And yet all Jedi kind of always focus on them. And there's always that reminder in the Jedi path, because we have that ambition to do good. So certainly, yeah, I don't know. Ambition, thumbs up. Can it lead to conflict? Absolutely. For those who are dynamically opposed to what we are doing, absolutely, can lead to conflict. And for those who just don't want any part of that, who would just rather live their lives and kind of be left to their own and focus on their own little inner circle, sure, you know, that's kind of exactly how that grew and blossomed out of. So, yeah, that's at least my view. Thoughts on the matter, as it were. Christopher, any thoughts, questions, concerns, reflections?
Yeah, so one thing, you just touched on it, but in the Dark Side essay, Darth Maul refers to the people as sheep. And that was just, I just want to go, you know, wow. You know? But what I wanted to touch upon is the Gray Jedi. And I'm kind of interested in the motivation at the time, and my idea is that it was kind of a conflict to Jedi wanting to be idealists and wanting an ideal outcome, but realizing we live in a real world and our work has to be pragmatic. It has to be the best we can do with what we got. And I was wondering if maybe the Gray concept came about because of, as the idea, a lot of black and white thinking in the community, all good or all bad, and not realizing that you can be an idealist and experience pragmatism at the same time. You know, we know now that the Jedi is more a nuanced path. You know, we have this quote about absolutes, you know. And so I'm just wondering, did the Gray come out with basically ideals versus pragmatic outcomes?
When they first came about, it was very much due to the black and white thinking, which certainly, as you were saying, had an issue with, you know, light Jedi was the idealism, but you were actually expected to follow that too. In the Force Academy, if you want to, real quick, and I think we go home, light Jedi, and it's just in this introduction. There it is. The second paragraph. True light Jedi are very rare. Very rare. It takes a special type of character to forego the urges and desires which drive most people on our small world. And it goes on to kind of touch on that. And this was the view, right? Like, Jedi were very much held to this very high standard of how you're supposed to act, your attitude, your demeanor, you know, and it carried a lot of misconceptions. And yes, the Gray and Shadow Jedi were born out of that realization that that's just not possible, right? That's just not feasible. You can't expect a human being to not only live but to excel in life under these kind of guidelines and conditions. And I don't know if I can say, I want to agree, I want to say pragmatism was definitely a part of that, you know, because as you're looking at that concept, you can say, well, that's kind of a pragmatic approach. But I think what really the original motivation was for a lot of it was simply that idea born more of fear of failure than anything, right? When someone started out and they wanted to be a light Jedi, but they're like, dude, this is just not feasible, right? This isn't working in my everyday life. I keep failing and falling, and this is just not something I can do. I want to, you know, hit this person under these circumstances. I want to be able to act emotionally under these circumstances. I want to do that. And then so it kind of actually grew out of people who wanted to be Jedi but couldn't really bring it together. Like, couldn't make the fictional ideal and the everyday life flow together without failing every single day in more spectacular ways than one, and it really caused an issue. So again, and that might have been like, well, look, pragmatically speaking, if this is the case, how do we go about it? How do we correct it? And thus, Gray Jedi or Shadow Jedi, you know, definitely came about, but. I think it was more really just the fact that people were failing at it, because our understanding, because how we started out was limited, and we didn't really know how to apply the Jedi path, and the flexibility that certainly does exist within our path, and kind of how, like, training then and training now is two totally different things. So it really took some time and a lot of trial and error and hitting our head against the wall and kind of seeing where we agreed and where we disagreed. So Gray Jedi, Shadow Jedi, they really taught the Jedi a lot about themselves, the Light Jedi, in comparison, because then we could see where we agreed and where that line was. We start seeing where, when you compared it and when you studied under it, like I studied under Shadow Jedi, and I studied under Gray Jedi along with all of my other Jedi stuff. But and in there you start seeing the individual markers of where something was born out of fear of failure and where something was born out of a pragmatic approach of, no, this simply doesn't work, in today's society, and we need to find a better approach. And I'm not saying that those approaches at the time were the best solution, but they just definitely, or even the better solution, they just pointed out that a better solution was necessary, and that Jedi did have to evolve, that they did have to grow if they wanted to actually live a conducive, a lifestyle that is conducive with, benefit, positivity, and, as you would say, utility. It required some adjustment. And in that adjustment period, absolutely, you had the Gray and Shadow Jedi come out of that, and help lead the way. They definitely played a part, and it was definitely necessary. Like, these things were necessary for growth, and they were a byproduct of where we were. They were a necessary element for our evolution, and it's why I always kind of remind people to kind of take them with a grain of salt now, because our evolution has kind of moved beyond that. And we do understand that a more grounded, practical application approach is necessary for a path of everyday life. And while we want our ideals, and while we stick to our ideals, sometimes there's going to be cases where you have to adjust, and you have to make decisions on the fly, and that requires things. But as we see, even in the fiction, there's Jedi who do that, and they're still Jedi, right? They're not given another thing. They're still Jedi. They just kind of approach things differently, as is the case with us. So certainly an interesting way that it comes together. Pragmatism, I'm sure, played some part, but really I think it was more necessity out of anything. Let's check the Q&A. Aha, we have a Q&A. All right. So this will probably be the last thing, by the way, just in case those of you who are on the clock, and then we'll probably get going. Or I'll probably touch on just real quick the training thing, but that's about it. With the pending influx of content from the new movies and whatever fan fiction comes off of those, do you think that any of the codes aspects that have been evolved within the community from the past 20 years withstand the temporary burst of new content? So, will our old content survive the new? Yes, absolutely. History, if nothing else. Tradition, if nothing else. It will definitely survive that which proves itself useful and shows ingenuity, and that provides growth, will definitely benefit in utility, as Christopher is fond of saying. If it has that, it will most likely stick around. If the new content has that, it'll stick around. But there's things from the Clone Wars show, right? Everybody loves the Clone Wars show. Not everybody, but a good number of people love the Clone Wars TV show that was on Cartoon Network. A lot of stuff came out of there, but not everything is stuck, right? Very, very few people like the Crystal Code, for example. It hasn't really found its way into the Jedi community as core mandatory things, unlike the Jedi Code, right? The Crystal Code is there. Some like to use it, some just enjoy it, but it hasn't found its way as a mandatory teaching tool in the Jedi community. So I think it'll very much be the same thing applies. It'll be there, and we'll look at it, but if it doesn't have practical application, if our path has already evolved beyond whatever is presented, then it will fall to the wayside. It will not measure up. If we can, really tear it apart and provide or show that it provides little value to the path and living as a Jedi, then it simply won't hold up. We have enough experience, we have enough tradition, and we have enough people that have been doing this for 10 years or more that new content will be inspiration, but it won't always be kept. So it very much depends on the content itself and what it provides in the path of the Jedi, and certainly utility on that. But as Christopher points out, there may be good stuff. So, and again, if it is, and you know, same thing. If there's good stuff, if it provides, you know, benefit to our path and our way of life, then we will absolutely embrace it. Will that take away from the Jedi Code or materials like that? I don't think it'll take away. Add to? Certainly. Certainly, if there's great stuff there, we're going to take it. If there's new movie quotes to dissect and use, and like we did with the old trilogy and still do with the old trilogy, we're going to do that as well. You know, that stuff is still looked at. The Jedi or Jedi or whatever code from Dawn of the Jedi, you know, that's another new code that's come about, but it hasn't really, you know, cemented itself into the community. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't like the original Jedi Code, but the, you know, it's about what really fits and what really flows, and some stuff sticks and some stuff really doesn't. So it could. There's always the potential that we get new stuff, new great stuff, new understandings, things that blow our mind, and we're like, what? Awesome. Let's go with that. Let's dig into that. But I don't think that'll take away from anything or remove anything per se. Just add to the continued flavor and diversity of our path and the things that we do, you know, the way that we express it and the way that we live it. I think it can add to that, but I don't think it'll take away. I mean, even if the Star Wars movie comes out and all the Jedi now are straight mercenaries and they're hanging out with Mandalorians and they're just, you know, fighting their wars on their own little planet, guess what? You know, our path is not going to all of a sudden shift and change and become that, right? We're not just going to stick a flag in our own little ground and start going to war, and because that's what we're supposed to do. The fiction can take its turn, but we have enough now that we have a beginning and we have a core, and we can add to that, and Star Wars can add to that, and we can continue to be inspired by it, but it's certainly, we've built enough through our own work and our own understanding and our own experiences that Star Wars is kind of losing its hold on what we say is core to the path. Just kind of how it works. But again, we love it, it stays in, so hopefully Disney writers, you know, take note of that, write some good stuff so we can add it in and everybody can be happy. But yeah, okay, so I think that answers that. Okay, so currently answered that, boom, done. Hey, Talleyrand, did you see that, man? I learned how to use the little Q&A thing. You should be proud of me. I learned how to use it. It's answered. All right, so last thing, very quickly, because I'm going over the time, my fault, is just the training. Training at the Force Academy has always been a certain style, and that's apprentice style. It's a fun style. It's a great style, but I like the overall version of everybody learns the core thing, right? You have your little academy everybody goes to, and then someone picks you out of there. You know, you find a good match between master and apprentice. And then you go on, and then you go on to your. That's the one. That's my preferred style. But Force Academy has always had it where you went in, and you just got involved. You just jumped in, and then someone who was a knight or counselor or whatever, master, if they were engaging with you and they liked what they saw, they liked your viewpoints, and they thought you kind of vibe with one another, they'd be like, "Hey, you know what? You're a smart cookie. I think you should train under me." That's kind of how it was, and it's still how that kind of works to this day. Force Academy has added academy-style lessons and such to it. I don't know if they're still going with that. It's been a couple years since I've been back there, and their training's always kind of evolving and changing. They're always trying to work on it, so I give them that. Changes per aspect, by the way. That's just Jedi aspect that I'm talking about. Dark and Shadow aspects have their own training systems and their own way of doing it. So, but originally, all of it back in 1999 was you jumped in, you said your 2 cents, you got into the debates, you got into the mix, you gave your opinions, and then someone would come along and ask you. And asking for a master was a no-no. Don't do that. That's the first way not to get a master. Being like, I need a master. You were like, oh, check them off the list, blacklist. You're out. You're gone. right? Unless you really were, unless you then really brought some good discussions to the table, then they'd be like, oh wait, never mind. No, that's a smart cookie too. I want that person too. But I love the apprentice and one-on-one style of training. It just needs to be augmented. There always needs to be that core. But that was Force Academy's main thing. That was their main way of doing it, was apprenticeships, which worked, kind of. Also showed the weakness of it. So, the weakness was that there wasn't an overall judging system. They didn't have a great way to then judge. It was always left to the master's discretion, which, it's internet, man. And when you just leave it to someone you've grown attached to and friends with, and then you're like, oh, well, now my life's busy and I'm kind of bored and I don't really have anything less to teach you, so you're just a Jedi Knight now. Congratulations, because I don't really know what else to tell you. Yeah, that's a flaw in the system. So yeah. If there is any more questions, if not, then there's questions. And Katie, you're making the show run long. You're making it run long. All right, we're doing this in order. Talaran, if you got some questions, man, better type them up quick. We can go quick. First, it's got to start with Gabe. Gabe, any questions, comments? That's a blurry. That was a horror face thing, man. At least on my screen. Okay, Katie, hit us.
Sorry for taking up all the time, but I wanted to say, actually, I don't know when you went through the training thing, but actually it did change. There was basically they instituted a trials thing, so it wasn't just you're a master saying, okay, surprise, you're a knight now. It was definitely a weird system. Like, I trained there for 3 or 4 years and got a master finally after I'd sort of stopped looking for one, which I think is how that goes. But at that point, I had actually learned all really I was going to get out of Force Academy personally. So like a month and a half later, I got knighted. So it's definitely was sort of an interesting system. But I did have a trials, like all of the knights, the people who had been knighted previously, like, it was sort of the precursor of our current type of system. They did a review board, but over AIM. That's right. How long ago that was. But for 3 or 4 hours, grilled me with questions over chat that I had to, respond to in real time. So there was a sort of early version of the way people seem to like to do trials these days. By the end, I think that was 2008. Okay. So that's more close to the current version of the Force Academy. But it was an interesting system. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, when I first went through it was 1999, and I was just given. It was Andrew, the Force Master, was basically like, hey, I need someone to write lectures and be on the inner council. We're creating an inner council and stuff like that, and we had talked about it personally, like the main members at the time had talked about it, creating kind of an inner council and administration on how to, to kind of, and then individual councils. So I was given Jedi Master title, seat on the inner council, and head of the Light Jedi Council, in which time both myself and Life, or the Force, if you will, decided to be like, yeah, probably not the best idea. And I lost my internet connection at home, so I couldn't be spending the time. I was spending a lot of time on the Force Academy at the time. And yeah, so I had to come in off of a college computer and be like, yeah, I don't have internet access. My personal recommendation is Jedi Knight G to take over and to do the lectures and stuff, and then he went on to do a phenomenal job, so I stand by that recommendation, but yeah, and then after that I went back, I think it was in 2010, and they did have trials then, but they were different. Like, you had to send in a Jedi resume and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. For me at the Force Academy in like 2009 or 10 or whenever it was different, just because, I don't know, Jedi sites tend to treat me a little bit differently due to, like, I don't know, longevity, I suppose, or what have you. So yeah, it was just kind of like a formality, I guess, which I don't approve of. Was actually kind of disheartening and all that, because I prefer like, trials. I like the fictional idea that you're going through something and you come out the other side of it and you're like, I feel like a Jedi Knight. I feel like maybe it takes you a day or a week, but you're like, no, I feel it. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good with that. But yeah, I know they've changed and they've altered it over the years, but and again, because of that weakness, they saw it within themselves. Yeah, it did not work out well to leave it over the internet and just, yeah, it was a bad system. It had its flaws, but we learned, we grow, we adapted, as proven. We grow out of it, and we're still developing to this day. Like the knighthood this year at the Indiana gathering is going to be even different than it was that last year and the year before that, and it's growing, it's evolving, it's becoming a better process, and your trials at Indiana, Katie, are going to be scary, scary. Okay, so Christopher, anything, my man?
Just one small thing.
Sure.
I've never been knighted anywhere, actually. When you refer to me as a Jedi Knight, the communities I belonged to in the late 90s and early 2000s had an anti-title stance. Mm-hmm. So there was no titles. And so the first knighthood I'm going for is the California Jedi knighthood, and that's why I'm wearing this to externally show that I have the attitude of a learner, even though I've been on the path for many years. That that little factual correction.
Fair enough. It's disclaimer accepted. But anytime someone puts their stuff out there, there's always a perceived notion of and to go along with the anti-title that did run for quite some time. A lot of, and some groups still have that anti-title view, and the titles become honorific. So someone who does teach or instructs or gives out their stuff and people do follow tend to get knights. But cool on the Padawan, fully apprentice or learner style. As we all know, it's a mandatory mentality you have to have. Being a master or knight or whatever, it's not a pinnacle, right? You don't stop. It's it's not even a plateau, man. You're still going, and you still have lots to learn, and there's still so many more experiences to have. So yeah, I mean, it's just an ongoing thing. It's a lifestyle, right? It doesn't stop. So fully get that. Tao, man, any question? Not a question. Okay, so not a question, but it would be nice if there was a neutral zone like site somewhere that guided newbies, as you might put it, to the various websites and orders and groups based on what kind of path they want to lead, or even well, technically we have. I mean, like, technically that's the point of the Facebook Gateway of the Jedi, is for that. That's why there's no philosophical discussions there. That's why there's no, like, it's just things that are going on in the community, such as, that's why you get things like, hey, Jedi Gathering's happening here, and where you get, like, these things are happening. It's just news of the thing, so it's built for people to come in and say, hey, I really like the Grey Jedi code, and it's happened in there. Someone's come on and they're like, well, I'm a Grey Jedi, and philosophical, and I had to be like, well, philosophical debate aside, you might want to check out this group. And there, yeah, and individual individual groups definitely have things like that as well. That like California Jedi, for example, has resources and lists of sites, and kind of where their focus is at, and things like that. again, the best thing to do is find yourself a Jedi who knows the community, right? Be that Cayenne, Angelus, even Hannigan, if you want. You know, Hannigan knows the community. Paris knows the community. Myself, anytime you just have a question like that, just ask someone that you know that's kind of been around. Jax has been around, and you know, and has their ear to the kind of community. So you say, this is where I'm at, this is what I want, you know, this is what I'm looking at. Do you know of a group? And they'll list off probably 2 or 3 groups that you can check out. Some you're probably already a part of or things like that. Really, it's just about community, right? So it would be nice to have a very specific place like that. Like I said, we kind of have that. My second site that I ran was called Gateway of the Jedi, and that was back in 2000. And that's exactly what it was. That's all it was a signpost to point out different websites, what their focuses were, what their isms were eventually when we got into isms, what their, you know, sides, if they had aspects or sides, what their teaching was like, did they use apprentice, did they use academy style, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice tool to have, but it can take away. Don't let it take away. You know, talk. Throw a shoe at a Jedi, man. See a Jedi, throw a shoe at him and be like, hey, I got questions. I don't know where to go, man. You're a Jedi. I see you're a Jedi. You're part of Jedi groups. Let me get a piece of your time. And look, Jedi are Jedi, man. They're gonna be helpful no matter what, right? So, absolutely. Just my advice in that is, one, either go to Gateway of the Jedi, and then again, same deal. Raise your hand. Be like, this is what I'm looking for. This is my ideas. You know, any suggestions, and you get a couple. And it's a community thing, so not just one person's going to answer you. You know, you're going to get a bunch of answers. Also, yeah, hit up a Jedi. Bug them, poke them. That's what they're there for. They love it. All those people with Jedi Knights and Jedi Master titles, man, they love that stuff. That's why they wear the title. They love being bugged. They love Jedi coming out of the woodwork, poking them on the shoulder and asking them questions. That's what they're there for. Angelus loves it. Katie loves it. Christopher loves it. Hannigan loves it. They all love it. So go bug as many Jedi as you can and ask them questions, and you'll be good. So yeah, you're good, man. Yeah, I say bug people. That's my answer to that. If you're looking for something very specific and you're hoping there's a group, or you're not sure, ask. And yeah, and that kind of eases you into it too. If you don't want to jump into a community and ask, you can ask an individual Jedi, and kind of getting that one-on-one talking with Jedi can kind of ease you and make you comfortable in kind of approaching Jedi and seeing that, like, yeah, not all Jedi are crazy people like myself, you know. We're not all going to be like, rah, you know. So, you know, poke a Jedi, have some fun. You know, that's my answer for that one. All right, so, we've gone really long. This was longer than the Jedi Code. Thank you, Force Academy. You've now won another record for longevity. Good job, man. Good job. Oh, if you want to check out Force Academy nowadays, you can go to forceacademy.co.uk. They're there for you. Say hello. Tell them Opie sent you. They'll probably kick you out right away. So don't tell them I sent you. Just go there, say hello. It'll be good times. All right. So that does it for this week. Don't forget about next week. If this time works for people, I'm going to try to get feedback. If 4 o'clock works better than 3 o'clock, we might be changing the time. So keep an eye out for that. Have a great night.